Well, what they're complaining about is the ongoing bombing of Iraq, which is a relatively untold story. Sanctions which have gone on for over 10 years and claimed, according to UN statistics, and the study of Mary Berry from New York, over 1.5 million lives, mostly children.
Well, but this can't be true because Iraq is getting a huge sum of money from its oil sales, and it doesn't permit it to be spent on food and medicine because it wants to create the impression that the civilian population is suffering. I knew the figure; it's at least I don't know what it is, but it's in the high billions.
At any rate, we're discussing the rage of the Arab street.
I don't think bin Laden is triggered because Iraq refuses to spend its money that it has on food medicine, which we are letting them sell oil.
Well, if that's true, and there is reason to believe, some believe that that's not altogether true, but if it is true, is there a reason for, or a justification for continuing sanctions that continue to take people's lives who are totally innocent?
I don't think the sanctions are taking people's lives. They may do a lot of things, but they're not taking people's lives.
They also complain about the fact that Israel is using F-16s made in the United States, American tanks and American helicopters.
Look, I'm not saying they have no grievances. Israel has been an ally of the United States for 50 years. And Israel last year, under our auspices, made the most generous offer that's been made. And the result of it was an intifada. So I'm not saying that the Arabs have no grievances. I'm saying that no grievance justifies this act of terrorism.
Of course not. But there are extremists who percolate to the top. We've seen this in this country with Timothy McVeigh.
And when they attack our country, then we go after them.
You think that the investigation should proceed slowly and with care, at moderate speed, or swiftly?
It should proceed with moderate care, but I repeat, this is not a legal problem.
Should we seek the extradition of bin Laden?
I'd be prepared to ask for that.
We are? Afghanistan says it will not grant it.
Well, then, as I said, we must do what is needed to prevent this.
You know, Gaddafi came forward and he expressed extreme sorrow at these horrors. And it is said that he did so because he felt that this would thwart any military action against him if there had been some bad activity, terrorist activity going on within his country. Likewise, it is said that Afghanistan has granted or has put bin Laden into house detention for the same reason. My point to you is this: if a nation that has been cooperative or sympathetic or silent for closing the eye to terrorist activity within its own boundaries shows reform or shows even affective contrition and purpose of amendment, would you then use the fullness of multilateral force in any military way, or if they're cooperating, would you let it go at that?
I'm not starting out with the determination to use force. I'm starting out with the determination to put an end to the terrorist network.
That will require force.
Well,
economic force?
It will certainly require significant pressure if they actually dissolve these organizations and make it impossible for them to operate for an extended period of time. That's one thing. But simply expressing contrition or giving blood for the victims.
Well, purpose of amendment. They will clean up their act. They will be reformists. They'll pay more attention to it.
There have to be actions, not promises.
There will be actions too. Would you then regard that?
I don't see any sense in using force just to use force. And I think so close to the event, it isn't for me, who's been sort of trapped here, to come up with a precise set of actions.
I feel this is entrapment, sir.
It's no hardship to be in a good hotel in Germany, but I'd like to be closer to where I can get a feel for what people are thinking.
And they, what you're thinking.
Well, and to do what I can to be helpful.
Would you describe the current investigation of this event as a police matter?
No, I think this is a matter of...
Is it being conducted as a police matter?
Well, we have a tendency to, when something like this happens, to retaliate somewhere and then to try to find some perpetrators and then close the book on the episode.
Do you think this is also a political matter?
This is a highly political matter.
Highly political. Could you describe how highly political it is?
Well, I'm starting from the assumption that these terrorists, whoever they are, cannot operate without some state support, without some funds that are being transferred to them from established institutions and being given help in the way of passports and all kinds of facilities that facilitate their movement.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this means that there is a nexus with something that try to break.
You think the United States is weakened because of this, or what do you perceive as the long-range, mid-range, long-range effects of this horror?
I think actually we will come out of it stronger.
We will.
Yes, because it brings home to our people that we live in a dangerous world, that there is something out there that must receive our attention, both in the positive and in the negative sense, because I grant some of your points that we should reduce hostility to us, so not in response to a terror attack. And it will unite our people. It has united the Atlantic Alliance, which for the first time in its history passed a resolution that threat to the peace exists. The question of whether we and our European friends still have any common purpose has been answered for the time being. So all of this, it's a terrible price to pay, has restored a sense of proportion.
And the NATO unity today is certainly more comforting than what we saw when the terrorist Abu Nidal was released by the Italians after we had apprehended him on Egypt Air, correct?
No comparison. And that time, Abu Nidal had captured an American ship or a ship on which there were a large number of Americans, killed a number of Americans. And nevertheless, one of our allies did not want to detain him because of fear against its own population of retaliation.
There is a regimen that is being introduced at Americans' airports and on airplanes. It goes from denying passengers steak knives to eat their steak with, steak knives presented by the management to proposed marshals. Some people believe that this kind of regimen has defeated the return to normalcy, which return to normalcy says more about us than the delay of normalcy, which seems to be playing into exactly what the terrorists want.
Well, as a general proposition, I would favor returning to normalcy as quickly as possible. I can't judge these individual measures, but when one takes these measures, one ought to take steps that one can carry out over an indefinite period of time.
In this part of the world, there's a great deal of fright also. In Frankfurt, the bank shut down on Thursday, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Some businesses have not reported, have told their workers they need not come because they're frightened here in Germany. So the tentacles of this reach far and wide. Admitting that the horrible heinousness of this act, the indescribable dimension of it, something we've never seen before, can we nevertheless extract any constructive, reformist tangent to it? Like, if this had come along, perhaps a terrorist act that would involve a nuclear operation might have come first. And this might deter that, so these people, innocents, have not died in vain.
I think this is an important wake-up call, and I think the people didn't die in vain, though one would pray that it hadn't happened. It's when I think of these people on the airplane in that hour or so, half hour before they died, that is a cruel day.
But the United States only functions sometimes when there is crisis. Is that true? And you need a crisis to stimulate a population and a government, a regime.
For Americans, it's very hard to believe the depth of the hatred, that there's nothing in the American experience in a society in which really human relations are very easy. So there's nothing that really prepares Americans for this sort of attitude, and bringing it home to us, as it has been brought home to us, will now unite us. And I think not only in a negative sense, it will get more attention to foreign policy, because we know now that the world out there is dangerous, and that we must not only resist what President Bush called evil, but try to create a constructive environment as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kissinger, for your time and for your enlightenment.
Imagine a world where we're not diminishing resources, we're growing them. Ethanol, a cleaner burning fuel, made from corn. ADM, the nature of what's to come.
Brought to you in part by the Philip Morris family of companies, Kraft Foods, Philip Morris USA, Miller Brewing.